There's a very particular taste to humiliation. It's metallic, laced with the heat of shame and a dry sting in the back of your throat. I recognized it the moment my voice cracked into silence, standing before 30 expectant faces at the auditorium in Surry Hills, the two pale spotlights making sweat bead above my eyebrows. I'd spent 6 months practicing for this pitch, 4 more painting the series. I'd framed the canvases myself, named and numbered them, curated a slideshow with the soft, calculated words investors liked. I'd borrowed a blue corduroy blazer from my cousin Peter, hoping the sleeves would hide my nervous twitch. The first slide flickered behind me, a close-up of brushwork. Deep oil strokes, burnt sienna and Prussian blue curling into a city skyline. I heard a stifled cough from the front row. Our cities aren't just backgrounds, I began, forcing steady breath. They're living presences. I want to paint them as strange and familiar. Someone's phone started ringing, some synthesized pop riff, which they didn't bother to silence. I stumbled ahead. With your support, I can build a gallery show called Seeing Sydney. My tongue felt thick. I stole a glance at the row of panelists, 2 venture capitalists in well-pressed blouses, a local property manager, a gaunt art dealer with an uninterested squint. All of them, it seemed, had perfected the art of the flat-lipped smile. By slide 4, I'd lost the thread completely, the words on my note cards pressed together in a blur. I skipped entire points, skipped the personal bit about painting my mother in the Botanic Gardens. Nothing landed. The final, shakiest plea, I'm looking for 15,000, and every one of these pieces is Sydney as most of us never see it. With the right support, I think it could change how people look at, trailed off as someone's chair squeaked, striking the silence into pieces. When I finished, I tried to meet their eyes. The art dealer was busy on his phone. The 2 women wrote notes. The property manager mouthed thank you with all the ceremony of depositing a bag of rubbish on the curb. A few hands clapped. Pity clapping, I thanked them and carried my canvases back out to the corridor in that weird public quiet. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed in Lakemba, boots still on, hands raw and copper-tanged. My brother Travis was slouched in the armchair playing Xbox. When I told him about how it went, he smirked, eyed the door. Didn't think they did art investments in this country, he said. Why would they bother? No one cares, he blew a raspberry. Come on, you're a painter, not the next Banksy. No one from this neighborhood makes it. Should have picked up a trade like Dad. Dad, of course, was in the kitchen, absently watching the news, occasionally peering over his glasses at the catalogue of my paintings on the table. He flicked through and grunted, might be nice for cafes, big ones, you know what sells, beaches, surfers. In my head, I wanted to argue, paintings weren't wall ornaments, they were stories. The city was silence and thunder at once. I saw it beating, breathing, aching, but then I heard my aunt's sharp laugh boom from the family WhatsApp group the week before, mocking my GoFundMe. Imagine getting paid for some blobs on canvas. Wish it was that easy. It burrowed inside my stomach, cold and heavy. That kind of mockery, you find, is never just a joke. It accumulates in tiny cuts. At Christmas, relatives would ask, still painting, with faces that begged for news I'd failed and moved on. Old friends craned, then quickly switched topics to real jobs. My cousin Terry handed me business cards for a mate's home renovation business, just in case you want to actually make money. After that pitch night, I stopped painting for weeks. I packed my brushes in a shoebox and left the canvases stacked behind my wardrobe. I picked up more shifts at the bottle shop, stocking shelves, pretending not to hear customers mutter about the bloody mess arts degrees had made of my generation. Nights blurred, the paint under my nails faded, my hands forgot the glide of bristles over canvas, but it hurt, the not painting. There's a kind of ache that builds when you leave something vital untouched. It was in the morning sun slicing through the blinds, the low click of the kettle. I started sketching on receipts, then in the corners of my work notepads, a tramline, a face on a milk carton, the meat display at Woolies. Little drawings, unremarkable, but they kept living in my head. One Tuesday, Mum's best friend Mrs. Ganny was visiting, bearing lemon cake and news from out west. She glanced at my hands, at the receipts littering the lounge. You can't keep it in, can you? She asked quietly, offering a piece of cake. It gets out, somehow, somewhere. She smiled at me like she understood in some secret way. Her daughter, Jen, had left for Paris at 20 and never came back. They remembered the ones who also left. That night, I dug out my brushes. I started painting again, late and quietly, in the breaks between stocking shelves and calls from inverted family WhatsApp groups. I used the backs of brown cardboard boxes when the canvas ran out. I painted the city at 3 a.m., the glowing windows of apartment towers, the bruised dawn sky splitting behind cranes in Redfern. I worked until my body hummed with tiredness, then slept a little and started again. I didn't share the paintings, that was the difference. I painted for myself, I painted with grief and urgency. Sydney was so many things at night: factory lights, the glitter of glass and steel, a sense of things changing faster than memory could keep up. Back at the bottle shop, I met Adam, a regular, soft-spoken with the weary eyes of a man who'd lived too long in share houses. After our fifth offhand chat about the best read under 20, he mentioned he wrote for an online arts magazine. I felt the old habit kick, the tiny flicker of pride, hope, and fear blended into a kind of defensive nonchalance. I mean, I paint, I said, but it's nothing special, just cities, nighttime, usually Sydney. He raised his eyebrows, genuinely interested, catching that flicker underneath. Ever show them? Anyone ought to see. I was quiet for a second. Then I glanced down at a small cardboard panel that had been living in my bag, a study of Parramatta Road at dusk, headlights brushing the old shop fronts, a dusted sense of longing in cerulean. I handed it over, rough-edged and unvarnished. He held it in both hands, slow and careful, like it was something rare. "You should let me write about this," Adam said, his voice low. "Let's take a walk, show me your city." So I did. For 3 weeks, Adam met me after closing. We'd wander through back streets and parking lots, through alleys pulsing with graffiti, to old pubs washed in neon. Sometimes I'd paint quick impressions, showing him how the city wore different faces when most folks turned away. He wrote as we walked, scribbling notes, snapping quiet photos for reference. 3 weeks later, there it was, an article with a real headline: "Lost and Found Sydney." The nocturne portraits of Amir Hamid, my gritty, messy cityscapes lined the scrolling feature. Adam's words described the loneliness and electricity, the in-between spaces. He called my work restless, aching, tender, a different kind of Sydney story. I thought nothing of it. Who reads online art blogs? But in the next week, 3 emails came in asking if the work was for sale. 2 were from strangers, a third from a pop-up gallery in Chippendale. The manager offered wall space for their new Urban Visions show. I stared at the message for an hour, hands shaking, rereading the words. "We love the honesty in your cityscapes. Would you be interested in a small solo wall?" I sent back a clipped, formal thank you. When she replied with the dates, I agreed and walked to the living room in shock. Dad looked up from the evening news, mouth full of curry. "What's that? You win something." I shook my head. "I got into a show, a gallery in the city, next month." He snorted. "As long as it doesn't cost you. You know they trick artists these days. Money up front." But then I heard something new, Travis looking up from his game, raising an eyebrow. "Wait, you serious? Like people actually want these?" 3 weeks later, the gallery filled with low, curious conversations. My 13 pieces hung under neutral lights, the browns and ambers glowing on crisp white walls. The hum of music and laughter pressed close. Strangers leaned awkwardly, tilting their heads, whispering behind their hands like my family at gatherings. I saw Adam first, raising his whiskey to me. Then, to my shock, I saw Aunt Sonia and my cousin Peter standing at the far end. Aunt Sonia wore a bright scarf, trying to peer at my price tags, and Peter had a real estate smile plastered on his face. Dad came at the last minute, wearing his best shirt and looking everywhere except at the art. Travis was with him, hands shoved deep in his pockets. Neither met my eye at first, but then a red dot sticker appeared on one painting. Someone had bought Parramatta Road. 3 a.m. I felt dizzy, then another and another, the dots multiplying. By the end of the night, 7 had sold. Adam announced it to the room, dramatic as always. "That's half the wall, folks. Not bad for a Lakemba boy, hey?" The crowd laughed, clapped. I pressed both hands to my mouth, hearing it roar inside my ribcage. After, my family clustered in the gallery kitchen, eyeing the biscuit tray. Dad lingered by a painting, looking at it for a long time. He touched the frame, traced the edge. For a split second, I could see he wanted to say something, but the words got tangled. In their place, he pulled me into an awkward hug and patted my back, silent and solid. That was how it began, slow and uncertain. A few weeks later, I was invited to join a group show in Darlinghurst, then another in Melbourne. The magazine article kept circulating, an urban developer cold emailed offering commission work for their new building at Central. For the first time, I was earning more from sales than from the bottle shop. People who'd ignored me before began messaging, asking for advice for their creative niece or for a favor with introductions. Relatives who joked at my expense now commented earnestly under my art posts. My aunt bought a miniature cityscape for her kitchen at the full price, but none of it landed until I returned home nearly 2 years later to the house where it all started, Dad's 65th birthday. The family had hired the small hall at the community centre. I'd been away for much of the past year, Sydney, Canberra, even a 2-month artist residency in Japan, but now I was back, arms loaded with turmeric-stained Tupperware and a peace offering, something I couldn't explain in words. Inside, the tables were cluttered with platters and Coke bottles. My little cousins chased each other around the tacked-up decorations. My uncles leaned in corners, trading news of politics and cricket. When I walked in, the conversations knotted and shifted. "Long time, mate," came Uncle Raj, clapping my back. "You still at that painting business?" Cousin Peter chimed in, "Thought you'd be back by now, mate. Real work and all that." For a moment, it felt like nothing had changed, that the years of exhibitions and articles had been a dream I'd only wanted to have. I wiped my hands on my jeans, feeling 12 again. But this time I'd brought something. Wrapped in brown paper, sealed with string, was the commission piece I'd finished for Dad, a scene of our old house in Lakemba, painted golden and blue, with sun cutting through the back window, the edges soft as memory. I walked to the main table, and as everyone watched, I unwrapped it and set it up. The light caught the varnish, sending a shimmer across the room. I spoke softly, but it carried, "For Dad, for all those mornings. For home." The room went quiet. Dad stood. He stepped forward, squinting, then slowly traced the frame. "That's the house, isn't it?" He took in the details. The checked curtains, the scratched porch railing, even the wisteria Mum planted before she died. He looked up at me silently, face pressed thin between pride and tears. Someone took a breath. Then, from across the room, Aunt Sonia's phone lit up with an alert. She squinted at the screen, then at the painting, then back at the phone. Her voice loud through the hush. "Is this your painting on the Sydney Post homepage, the one they did a feature on last week?" Travis craned over her shoulder. The rest of the family crowded closer, scrolling through the article, a glossy photo of me standing beside a cityscape, headline in bold. "The painter making Sydney dream." For the first time, I watched the skepticism melt. They turned to the painting, searching for what the city folks had seen in it. They ran fingers over the edges, asked about colors and inspiration, about the crowds at the exhibitions and the names on the sales. One by one, each cousin and uncle and aunt came to me, not with old jokes but with admiration, wary, unsure but real. They saw at last something beyond the ridiculous dream. The disbelief shifted into a strange, quiet wonder. Later, as dusk slipped in through the windows, Dad and I sat on the back steps. The old house creaked. In the gathering dark, he nudged my arm. "You did it, eh?" He grinned, rare and tender. "Lived that wild dream. We all see it now." I looked across the yard, the shapes softened but real, home exactly as I'd painted it. I felt all the years, the rejection, the struggle, the rebuilding, settle into this one moment of return. It wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about giving back the beauty I'd carried with me, the one they'd given me in the first place. The loss, the mockery, even the sweat and hunger, all those things in the end shaped who I became. When I stood up to leave, my family followed me to the door, voices calling, plates pressed into my hands, all the awkward affection of people who'd nearly let me slip away. In the quiet lane, with starry sky above Sydney and my paint-stained hands warm in my pockets, I finally felt, fully, what it meant to come home.